Hi all, welcome to i-tutor Academy. In today's session, we will start with Unit 6 of MMPC 010, that is Demand Estimation and Forecasting. And objectives of this unit are identify a wide range of demand estimation and forecasting method, apply these methods and to understand the meaning of the result, understand the nature of a demand function, identify the strength and weakness of the different methods, understand that demand estimation and forecasting is about minimizing risk. Okay, so these are the objectives of this chapter, and structures are: introduction, estimate demand using regression analysis, evaluating the accuracy of the regression equation, regression statistics, the marketing approach to demand measurement, demand forecasting techniques, barometric forecasting, forecasting method, that is regression models, summary, keyword and self assessment questions also there. Okay, so let's begin with the introduction part. The first question which arises is that what is difference between demand estimation and demand forecasting. So here that estimation attempt to quantify the link between the level of demand and the variable which determine it. Forecasting on the other hand attempt to predict the overall level of future demand rather than looking at a specific linkage. For this reason, the set of techniques used may differ, although there will be some overlap between the two. In general, an estimation technique can be used to forecast demand, but a forecasting technique cannot be used to estimate demand. And a manager who wish to know how high demand is likely to be in 2 years time might use a forecasting technique. A manager who wished to know how the firm's pricing policy could be used to generate a given increase in demand would be use an estimation technique. And the firm needs to have information about likely future demand in order to pursue optimal pricing strategy. It can only charge a price that the market will bear if it is to sell the product. And on one hand, over optimistic estimate of demand may lead to an excessively high price and low sale, and on the other hand, over pessimistic estimate of demand may lead to a price which is set too low, resulting in lost profit. And the more accurate information the firm has, the less likely it is to take a decision which will have a negative impact on its operation and profitability. And the level of demand for a product will influence decisions which the firm will take regarding the non-price factors that forms part of its overall competitive strategy. An example, the level of advertising it carries out will be determined by the perceived need to stimulate demand for the product, as advertising expenditure represent an additional cost to the firm. Unnecessary spending in this area need to be avoided. And if the firm's expectations about demand are too low, it may try to compensate by spending large sum of advertising money, which in this instance may be at least partly wasted. And alternatively, it may decide to redesign the product in response to this, thus incurring unnecessary additional cost in the form of research and development expenditure. And in previous we demand analysis was introduced as tool for managerial decision for making, and it was shown that knowledge of price and cross elasticities can assist managers in pricing that mm, uh, income elasticities provide useful insight into how demand for product will respond to different macroeconomic conditions. And we assumed that these elasticities were known, or that the data were already available to allow them to be easily computed. And unfortunately, this is not usually the case, and for many business application, the manager who desires information about elasticities must develop a data set and use statistical method to estimate a demand equation from which the elasticities can then be calculated. And this estimated based on assumption about price, income and other factors. And in this unit, the basic techniques of demand estimation and forecasting are introduced. Okay, And the next subsection is estimating demand using regression analysis. So the basic regression tools discussed in block 1 can also be used to estimate demand relationship. Please refer block 1. We discussed unit 1, 2, 3. And consider a small restaurant chain specializing in Chinese dinner, and the business has collected information on price and the average number. So this is based on the example. Here is the data, city, meals per day and price. Okay, based on that the solution is here. And here is the equation based analysis is here. Okay, so please refer this 6.2 from your IGNOU study material and with the example. Okay, then you will be more clear about this section. And evaluating the accuracy of the regression equation, regression statistics. And once the parameters have been estimated, the strength of the relationship between the dependent variable and the independent variable can be measured in two ways. The first use the measure called the coefficient of determination, denotes like this, and to measure how well the overall equation explains change in the dependent variable. The second measure use the T minus, that is statistic, to test the strength of the relationship between an independent variable and the dependent variable. And testing overall explanatory power, define the squared deviation of any yi from the means of y. This is the equation, as the variation in y is this. So please refer these equations. And the total variation can be separated in two components: explained variation and unexplained variation. Okay, so the concept are explained below here. And the total explained variation is found by summing this squared deviation, that is total explained is like this. And figure 6.1, that is sources of variation in the estimated regression equation. So this is the three sources of variation are shown. Figure 6.1 is here. And the coefficient of determination, r square, measure the proportion of total variation in the dependent variable that is explained by the regression equation. So r square is equal to total explained variation divided by total variation. So that is the equation. And the value r square range from 0 to 1. If the regression equation explain none of the variation in y, and r square will be 0. Okay, and table 6.1 is there, computing the sources of variation in regression mode. So here is y and total variation, explained variation and unexplained variation is here. Okay, and the how high must be coefficient of determination be in order that the regression equation be said to fit well. Okay, so there is no precise answer to this question. For some relationship, such as that the between consumption and income over time, one might expect r square to be at least 0.95. Okay, in other cases, such as estimating the relationship between output and average cost for 50 different procedures, producers during one production period, and r square of 0.40 or 0.50 might be regarded as quite good. Okay, and evaluating the explanatory power of individual independent variable. The test is used to determine whether there is significant relationship between the dependent variable and each independent variable. This test requires that the standard deviation of the estimated regression of coefficient be computed. The relationship between a dependent variable and an independent variable is not fixed because the estimate of b will vary for different data samples. And this is all based on equation based. Okay, so concept you just clear from that only. Okay, so table here is selected value of students distributions. It's an example. From example you can get the idea. The standard error of the equation is used to determine the likely accuracy with which we can predict the value of the dependent variable associated with the particular value of the independent variable. And as a general principle, the smaller the value of the standard error of the equation, the more accurate the equation is, and hence the more accurate any prediction made from it will be. And to put this in another way, the standard error represents the standard deviation of the dependent variable about the regression line. And thus, the smaller the value, the better the fit of the equation to the data, and the closer the estimate will be to the true regression line. And conversely, the larger the standard error, the bigger the deviation from the regression line and the less confidence that can be put in any prediction arising from it. The standard error of the coefficient work along similar line, and it give an indication of the amount of confidence that can be placed in the estimated regression coefficient for each independent variable. Again, the smaller the value, the greater the confidence that can be placed in the estimated coefficient, and vice versa. Finally, the t, that is test, provide a further measurement of the accuracy of the regression coefficient for each of the independent variable. And a value of t greater than or equal to 2 generally indicate that the calculated coefficient is reliable estimate, and while value of less than 2 indicate that the coefficient is unreliable. Okay, so activity is here based on this, try to do it so the subsession is more clear. And next subsessions we will discuss on next video. And for more MBA series, you just do like, share and subscribe our channel. Thank you so much.
i-tutor Academy presents IGNOU MBA Complete Syllabus Coverage Classes for individual students, semester-wise subject with online flexible timing. For more details, contact on +91 623 827 1885